Hello guys, this is Idiot Loserface here. Today I'm going to start a little series called On the Spot Stories. What that is going to be me talking about stories that are just made up on the spot. I might have a basic idea for a story already, but I'm going to try to go in depth as possible as I can. It might not even be me starting off making a story as in just now, because I've never done this before. It might start off as me just going really in depth as a concept and me eventually being able to tell a story. But for this episode, I'm just gonna try to see what I can do with it. I haven't practiced. I'm just gonna sort of wing it. So let's see how this goes. I have the concept of it's a really weird concept, so I'll just try to start off right now. I don't know how to explain it, but let's go. Once upon a time, there was this boy named Callum. Callum never had a purpose. He was always poor. He didn't know what to do with his life. In this world, there was 3 stages of people. There was the rich, the medium, and the poor. And medium as middle class. And what happens is the rich people live in the sky. Actually, they live in the sky, like flying platforms. I don't know how they stay up, but they do. The middle people live on the main ground. The poor people live in the underground as basically slaves. So the poor people work for the medium people, the middle class, and they work for them, and they do whatever they say like slaves. And the middle class work for the upper class, which they come down to buy stuff, and just they rarely need to come down, but whenever they do, they just come just visit. And they're usually not the nicest people, but there are a few nice people. Just because they're raised that way. Usually they're born into being rich. They don't usually stay rich because it's been this way for a while. It's always been rich, middle class, and poor never got along. And since the poor live underground, they only get to come up during certain times of day. They never get to have fun. They just always are working, and they never get to experience what it's like on the outside world. So it starts off as Callum goes to work. He works at a slaughterhouse, and or not a slaughterhouse, I guess. It's kind of he works at a meat place where like he kind of chops up meat, I guess, and for the cooks, I guess, for the right size. I don't know what he does, but that's what he does. So what happens is Callum starts cutting the meat, and one of the middle class start pushing him around, like not pushing him but bossing him. Just Callum does what he can because he knows if he will be disobedient, there's gonna be a major consequence. So what happens now is the mayor and his daughter comes. The mayor is the same age as Callum, and Callum never seen someone the same age that was born under wealth, and he was very shocked to see how different the two were. Like he realizes that she was born into riches and he was born into being poor. So while the mayor of the city talks to the slaughterhouse, I'm just gonna call it a slaughterhouse. While the mayor talks to the slaughterhouse owner, the daughter talks over the kid. Talks over the Callum because they're the same age and she wants to start a little conversation. And since the people are kind of busy just admiring the mayor, trying to stick up to him. No one really notices the two communicating because that would sort of be like a forbidden sort of thing, like two people, like a rich person talking to a slave in this world, like unheard of. But what happens is, she sort of sees that he has chains like wrapped around his legs that stop him from being able to run. Because she's very unaware of what happens in the slave world. She like knows that people work for the middle class, but she doesn't know how poorly the people are treated. Her dad never taught her that. And then she introduces herself as Elizabeth. So they eventually the mayor was there for about an hour, and Elizabeth and Callum decided they made a plan to Elizabeth decided to try to come down and visit Callum. Like made a plan to try to come visit Callum as often as he could, because they wanted to like devise, or I don't know if that's a word, but try to make a plan to try to bring like a medium for everyone to be able to like just sort of a working environment from everyone, not try to like end slavery or make it where people are like even like the upper class, the rich people are sort of normal compared to everyone else. And the only way to do that is they get someone that's rich, which is going to be Elizabeth, and someone that's poor, and that's Callum, and see how the people aren't too different. So they're trying to get a plan going, but see, if people knew Callum was involved with something like this, Callum would be executed, because that's like trying to change everything that they know. So it's all basically up to Elizabeth to be public about this. But whenever Elizabeth comes in to talk to Callum, they devise plans and like talk about. They do interviews, but they never really go public with the interviews. It's just for Elizabeth to get an idea of what is happening in the poor people world. So she hasn't gone public about this yet, but what happens is her dad is catching on, which is the mayor, is catching on that she's going to see this, always going down, and he's wondering why, because she used to never go down without him, down to the medium, like the middle class world, and he's getting a little bit like suspicious, so he goes over there, and he starts following her, or he orders someone to follow her, and then he catches on. He finds out that she's talking to some poor person, a slave. His dad's not having that, so he hits her because she tells him about like how she feels about this, and he's the one that didn't start the thing, but his family's like. His family started it. He's just been he's really proud of his family, and his family's the one that kept this tradition going for such a long time of the poor, the rich, and the middle class. So what's going on is he got so mad that he hit her. So she ran away right on the spot, and the mayor said, "Don't worry about her. She'll be back because she has nowhere to go." So what she did was she ran the Callum because the slaughter owners started seeing her and knew she was the mayor's daughter and was being nice to her, letting her talk to Callum. So she decided to She decided to get some clothes, poor looking clothes, to disguise herself as a slave and live in the underground. Because the underground people, the slaves, don't live in the same, like, they don't have the same working schedule, so she just decided to live as an underground. She's been able to get away with it for about a week or so. Besides, before one of the middle class decide to go in there and see her, they don't know. She's well disguised, so they don't know who she is. So she has to make up her name. She goes by Marilyn. So what happens is she knows she doesn't have a job. They never had to get her a job, so they got her a job as a dishwasher at a restaurant. She's very well disguised, so people don't recognize her because, for one, she was only really out whenever the mayor was out, and that was very rare that the mayor would ever have to go out. Whenever he did, it was he went to go visit a lot, so like visit a lot of shops whenever he did go out. So people didn't know what his daughter looked like too much. So his daughter was going by Marilyn, but I'm still going to go by Elizabeth throughout the story. So what Elizabeth did was working as a dishwasher and was just working. She had chains on, and then she really felt like this was she really got a taste of how bad it was for everything. So what happens is now she decides to meet up with Callum in this, like, whenever nighttime, when it's bedtime. Decide to meet up, and they try to say we need to make a stand. And she gets her clothes back on, her regular rich people clothes back on. She walks back up and says, and then the guards are like, they know everything that goes on, except they're obviously confused by the disguise. So they know who the daughter is very well. So she goes up there. She's like, she's walking up there, and the guards are like, "What are you doing down here, Elizabeth?" And she tells them, "Do you want me to tell my dad that you've been keeping me down here as a slave?" And they were confused, and then they realized what was going on, and they're freaking out because they made the mayor's daughter work as a slave, and they didn't want that. So what they did is let Callum go for the promise of not telling them that they will let the mayor's daughter work as a slave. So they went to make flyers, like, they went to go make little flyer things. They made awareness, like they drew pictures. They then they went to a little. They went to. Elizabeth just went up to this little podium thing, unopened. I mean, she's the mayor's daughter. She basically gets to do whatever she wants because the mayor has a lot of power over this little city. So she walks up to the podium and makes a big speech explaining what's been going on. And this is, then once people get around to it, people start coming. Once people realize that the mayor's daughter, people start sort of like paying a lot of attention and start feeling sort of like, I don't want to say guilty, but sort of opening their eyes, kind of how they're kind of guilty. They kind of realize what they're doing, and some of them already knew that they were doing, but they're just sort of doing what they're told because that's what the rich tell them to do. So what they're gonna do is, since Elizabeth has the second most command, she's gonna just stay there in the middle class. Actually, she's gonna stay in the lower class with Callum. And actually, what she's gonna do, she's gonna do something that's never been done before. She's kind of young. She's the same age as Callum, and Callum's 20. And Callum already knew about this plan. So Callum and Elizabeth made a plan to get married because that's never been done before, and that's a rich person and a slave getting married. That's for sure the cause some sort of thing that happened. So what they do is they plan a wedding, and the mayor is begging, comes down to the thing himself and is begging it not to happen, but they insist they're gonna have it anyways. So what that happens is they get married, and so what happens is they get married, and no one's really sure what to do because so does Elizabeth live with Callum, or does Callum finally not get to become a slave? So they there was a new law in force that if you marry someone that is a higher class than you, you get to not be your like class anymore. As in, slave marries a middle class, they're middle class now. But that was a problem still because the only interaction people have is usually with slaves being their masters or other slaves being slaves. So that was a very rare occasion that would ever happen. So nothing really happened between that, but they were still. I mean, that's the only reason they got married, but they're still slowly like. They still kind of liked each other, but I mean, they definitely did like each other, but they just didn't express it because they're kind of shy. They only got married because for the thing, like I said. But so what happens now is they Elizabeth goes with Callum down to the middle place, and they order a speech, a speech that happened. She says, uh, something needs to change. We can't all be treated unequally, and then people are like cheering, like because people think are like, oh yeah, I'm middle class, I should be treated like the rich. But then she says slaves should not be treated like slaves, they should be treated like human beings. And then people are sort of like think about what they've been doing to the slaves, and then they're like, maybe she's right, because I mean they're people too, but it's like I need to get my work done. So everyone's thinking about. So she made a plan to go on strike and told everyone to go on strike. Workers, she's telling the middle class to not work and don't tell their workers to work. So that or at least work enough for other middle class and don't work for the richer class. Because if they don't get what they want, they have to listen to us. That's the only way they're going to ever listen to the middle class. So what happens is they finally are realizing, the rich is finally realizing they have to work with them and instead of just stopping bossing around. So they're trying to think of a way around it, of them getting their power back, but there's no real way because, I mean, they're people too. They have their own minds and their own way of working around things. So what happens is the mayor finally. No, that's not going to happen. Elizabeth is going to confront her dad and say, okay, what are you going to do now? And the mayor says, I don't know. And then she says, she devises a plan that the rich can still be rich, but they gotta work. Just maybe Maybe not as much since they already have the money, but they still need to work, not just get their stuff for free just because they're born with it. And then they said that slaves, they need their own homes, they need to get paid, and the middle class is needs to not be bossing. Like they need to be working together with the lower class to be building up a like a building up like a community and not just bringing the slaves up to work. And that's how it's gonna happen. So I know this story um was about Callum and it just sort of turned to Elizabeth, but that's what happens. Anyways, let me get back to it. So so the mayor says, "Okay, that sounds. I hate the break tradition, but that's what happened. Looks like what has to happen." So he makes the law where changes everything what she just said, and people are kind of confused on what to do at first, but they after a month, people are realizing how much better it is for everyone to work together instead of just people bossing people around the whole time. Everyone having a literal boss of their life. So people should be treated equal in every scenario. So that was my story off the top of my head. And I know it probably wasn't the best, or anyone's probably gonna watch this whole video, but that's that. And I'll see you guys later. Maybe.